Hi, Jeff.
Hi, you guys.
How
Hello,
are you?
Jeff.
Wendy, I gather.
Yes. And
Okay.
Rich.
And I'm
And Rich.
Rich.
Hi, Rich.
In name only.
I know. Tell me about it. All right, so we're on. Issa hasn't come on yet, I guess.
No.
No.
All right. He always likes to keep us in tension. So are there people registered for the?
178.
Whoa.
Now, we'll see, what the actual population is, but
Applause will be overwhelming.
there you are, indefinite.
Okay. I would suggest starting with Issa.
Okay, well, we've
You
got
know, because he deals more with on the ground what's happening, and I deal more with the bigger political thing. I mean, we intersect, but I think we start with him, and anyway, he's the Palestinian, so it's kind of appropriate.
Yeah.
All right.
If that doesn't mess up your planning.
I was going to start with both you and Issa. Basically, I wanted to start with how you got started with ICAD and
Right.
what's going on with house demolitions, and then go to Issa and how he got started with youth against settlements, and then get into
Okay.
some of the issues.
I think depending on the audience, we may have a fair number of people who don't know about house demolitions.
That's right. So
Right.
So
Okay.
that would be just the beginning, and then we would get into more of decolonizing Israel and the settlements and
Right.
one democratic state campaign and so
Right.
forth. And then also have Issa explain what it's like on the ground.
Mhm. Right.
That's right. And Issa has his own organization called Youth Against Settlements as well.
Yes, and
Right.
I'd like to have him speak about that. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So we're just waiting for him to.
Yeah, we do have a number of people who are logged on who are actually listening to us right now.
Oh, really? So we better not mention names.
Yeah. So
who I hate most in Maine. I'll just leave that out.
No, leave that out. Maine is the way life should be.
I know. I have a cousin there.
Oh.
So I've been.
Well.
Yeah.
I tell you what, it is 1 o'clock, and that is the time at which we agreed we would start. So how about we just do some introductions and stuff? And if Issa isn't here, we can start with you. If Issa is here, well, then we can hunt.
Okay. So, yeah, we'll get started. Hopefully Issa will show up soon. And I'm Wendy, and I'm the Maine Coalition for Palestine.
And I'm Rich, and I'm on the National Executive Council of the Episcopal Peace Fellowship, which is sponsoring this video, and also on the coordinating committee of the Maine Coalition for Palestine.
All right, very good. So as we go along with the webinar, if you have any questions for our speakers, just scroll down to the bottom of the screen. There's Q&A, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can.
Also, at the end of the webinar, our tech person, Bill, thank you very much, Bill, for all you've done for this. Our tech person, Bill, will be putting up QR codes and links to donate to various causes and charities related to both Issa and Jeff. So you'll be seeing those at the end of the webinar. So if you're waiting for an opportunity to answer the question, what can we do? Well, there's something you can do right there.
All right, very good. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to just give some brief bios for Jeff and Issa. Jeff was originally from Minnesota and received his PhD in anthropology from the University of Wisconsin. He emigrated to Israel in 1973. And in 1997, he co-founded the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions. He's also co-founder of One Democratic State campaign. He's an author, and his latest book is titled Decolonizing Israel, Liberating Palestine, Zionism, Settler Colonialism, and the Case for One Democratic State. This is the cover of the book here. He, along with Issa Amro, has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize this year. Issa is not with us yet. He is a lifelong resident of Hebron, As an engineering student at the Palestine Polytechnic University, Issa took action against the closure of the university by Israel, and along with other student activists using nonviolent resistance, the university was reopened. He is co-founder in 2007 of Youth Against Settlements, which uses nonviolent resistance against the Israeli military occupation of Hebron and the West Bank. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights declared him the Human Rights Defender of the Year in Palestine in 2010. And this year, along with Jeff Halper, he has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. So thank you for being here, Jeff.
Having me.
Yeah. So I just want to speak about ICAD a little bit and have you tell us about that and house demolitions as a means to crush dissent. Now, I saw a Palestinian house demolished in East Jerusalem in one of my visits. I think that was in 2013, and met with Atta Jaber and his family south of Hebron, who had been targeted by the settlers, and their family's home had been demolished and then rebuilt by ICAD. So I wanted to just make a comment about house demolitions. I find that to be one of the strangest and cruelest means of repression and collective punishment. And can you tell us what prompted you to found ICAD and why Israel is using house demolitions? Right. It's a strange concept for us here in the United States.
Right. Well, not if you're a Native American, maybe, but
yes.
Yeah, fair enough.
Fair enough.
With the same logic behind it. First of all, since you mentioned Atta Jaber, let me just say that that's a family we've been working with now for 26 years. They're almost a poster boy.
Issa.
Years
Hi, Issa.
Issa, Ahlan wa sahlan.
I'm just saying a few words, Issa, and then we'll begin in earnest. Atta's home has been demolished twice and rebuilt by ICAD, my organization, which rebuilds homes. In fact, we rebuilt the headquarters of Youth Against Settlements that Issa runs in Hebron. We've built almost 200 homes with Palestinians as political acts of resistance to the occupation. But we'd made a film for Al Jazeera about all the years that we worked with Atta. With his home demolitions, they demolished his water reservoirs. The settlers have attacked him. He lives right across the street from the same large settlement that also on the other end harasses Issa and his family all the time. And Atta just called me today and said the Israeli water company, Mikorot, like it does every year, just at the time where they're starting to harvest, has come and has begun uprooting all the irrigation pipes in all the Palestinian farms in what's called the Baca Valley, which is where Atta lives, near Hebron, which is one of the most fruitful and productive farmlands in Palestine. So the film is called Rooted in the West Bank, rooted like a tree is rooted, R-O-O-T-E-D, and you can see it on YouTube, simply. So just to get an idea of what we're doing, and Wendy, it's interesting that you also had that encounter with Atta.
Oh yes.
ICAD began in 1997 when the Oslo peace process, so-called, was in a state of collapse. Netanyahu had been elected the first time on an explicit anti-peace process ticket. And the occupation was reasserting itself in a very strong way. And you're right, house demolitions is the essence of really what it's more than just repression or displacement. It has to do with, and this is a very important concept, the Judaization of Palestine. This is the purpose of Zionism. This is the purpose of Israel until today, that every Israeli prime minister and politician will tell you up front. To Judaize Palestine, to transform an Arab country, Palestine, into a Jewish country, which is Israel. Now, to do that, to take over someone else's country, and you know very well from the Native American experience, a genocide is built into it. I mean, you can't take over another people's country, which means taking their land, Otherwise, you haven't taken the country, which means then displacing them by force, right? Which means replacing them with your own people. And in a sense, creating an Israel on top of Palestine, on the ruins of Palestine. And then, of course, the indigenous population can never simply voluntarily give up their country. There's always resistance. That's built into settler colonialism. Do you know that the American Indian Wars, as they're called officially, lasted about 300 years? You know when they ended? 1926. So this is how long the American settler colonialism campaign went on against the Native Americans. And that's where we are here in a process, and this explains Gaza to a large degree and what's happening in the West Bank, to a place of pacification. In other words, you have to break the resistance of the indigenous population, of which Issa is a key part in that resistance on the ground, before you then normalize. And key to the Judaization process, of course, with the taking of land and displacement, is house demolitions. I mean, how do you displace people and prevent them from coming back? You demolish their homes. And the message is get out, because if you don't have a home, you have no way to stay in the country. In 1948, during the Nakba, Israel demolished about 52,000 Palestinian homes. More than 530 entire villages, towns, urban areas completely almost erased the Palestinian presence from the country. And then in 1967, in the Six-Day War, until today, in the West Bank and Gaza, Israel's demolished another 60,000 or more Palestinian homes, including Atta Jaber's home twice, as we mentioned. And now in Gaza, I mean, the latest figure before the re-invasion of Gaza a couple of months ago was 300,000 Palestinian homes demolished. Now the number has got to be more than 500, actually more than 500,000. The entire Gaza, of basically a metropolitan area of 2.5 million people, has been razed to the ground, absolutely razed. So altogether, if you put that together, Israel's demolished 500,000 to 600,000 or more, 700,000 Palestinian homes. So we're not talking about some, reprisal act that happens here and there. We're talking about a massive campaign. And I'll end on this. What's important to emphasize is that this is not done for security. This is done, most of the homes are demolished of individuals are simply demolished because Israel will not give permits to families because they want them to leave the land. They want to create impossible conditions by which they leave. So most of the demolitions are simply of innocent people. What are called punitive demolitions of what are, in response to attacks are less than 1%, much less than 1% of the demolition. So we're talking about a proactive campaign of displacing Palestinians from the land. And what ICAD has always done is, first of all, make this an issue, but at the same time, again, we resist the demolition of homes. I mean, I get in front of bulldozers, which is why I'm built this way. And I can do that because I'm an Israeli Jew. So I have that privilege. I know they're not going to shoot me. They're not going to arrest me. They're not going to beat me up. They'll push me aside for an hour and demolish. If Issa would do the same thing, if he would get in front of a bulldozer, they shoot him on the spot, period. So we resist with Palestinians, and then we rebuild homes, if the Palestinian families are willing, as political acts, joint acts of resistance to the occupation and to this whole colonial Judaization policy. So we've built close to 200 homes. That's not a lot of homes in the context of 700,000 or 800,000 that have been demolished. But if you think of that as 200 joint acts of political resistance, it takes a lot of courage on the part of the Palestinian families, then it's really significant. So that's, in a nutshell, what ICAD's work is all about.
Okay. Can you also comment about the demolishing of homes of Palestinian citizens of Israel that has mostly been occurring in the Negev area. Is ICAT involved with that as well?
We are. We have to remember that this process of, maybe because of the two-state idea, that is, never was and never will be, maybe because of that, we're used to thinking of Israel as a normal place, and next to it is an occupied territory that we're fighting over, the West Bank and Gaza. So we're all looking at the West Bank and Gaza. But in fact, of course, the first stage of the Judaization process was what became Israel. So what's happening today in the West Bank and Gaza happened here in Israel, but it happened in 1948 in the Nakba. So people kind of forget about it. But 90-some% of the land of the Palestinian citizens of Israel were already taken back in 1948 or in the early 1950s. Palestinian citizens of Israel represent around 20% of the Israeli population, and yet they're confined by law and planning regulations to 3.5% of the land. Mm-hmm. And their homes, there are some years, if you take away Gaza, there are some years in which there are more demolitions of Palestinian homes inside Israel than there are in the West Bank and Gaza. And that's because the process of displacement hasn't finished yet inside Israel. And you're right, the main focus is on the Bedouin communities in the Negev, because Bedouins were always nomadic, and so they control or they graze on vast tracts of land. And in order to grab that land and build, settlement building is done inside Israel as well until today. It's not only a matter of the West Bank. In order to take that land and to Judaize the Negev, home demolitions is very, very common. There's one famous community that we've worked with for years called Al-Arakib that's been demolished more than 200 times and rebuilt by its Bedouin residents and by Israeli activists each time. In other words, this process of Zionist colonization and displacement is still occurring all through the country, from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River, and not only in what are called the occupied territories.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now I have a question. This is for Issa. Thank you for being here. Can you tell us more about what prompted you to become an activist in Hebron and why you founded Youth Against Settlements? And what specifically are you teaching the young people in Hebron to resist the occupation? And how has Youth Against Settlements changed over the last 18 years?
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you all. And thank you, Jeff, for your great effort for peace. As a Palestinian or as an Israeli, you can choose to be part of the problem or part of the solution. Me and Jeff, we chose to be part of the solution. To be part of the solution means that you are not silent, you are not supporting violence, and you are not supporting fascism or extremism or annexation. I am a normal Palestinian. I was living with a normal Palestinian family. My father lost his father in 1950. So my grandfather was killed by the Israeli military for smuggling goods from West Bank to Gaza and from Gaza to West Bank. So Gaza issue was not new. My grandfather was killed by the Israeli military in 1950. And 1967, when they occupied Hebron, my father was carrying food to his family in the mountains because the Palestinian families left the city center because the rumors were that the Jews are coming to revenge for 1929 massacre, or the massacre which happened in Hebron against the Jewish community. But in 1929, the majority of the Jews in Hebron were protected by their Palestinian neighbors. So everybody left to the mountains. So my father was taking food to the family. So he was shot and injured severely. So he decided, my father, that we, his kids, we are 7, 3 daughters and 4 sons. I'm in the middle. he decided that no politics in the house. That's a normal, typical Palestinian family. No politics. Focus in your education. Focus in your daily life. Because, you know, to do any political activities, you will be the enemy of the occupation. Non-violence is not allowed according to the Israeli military law. So even non-violence, it's a big issue. So I was raised in a family who wanted me to stay away from any politics till I was 14. The Ibrahimi Mosque massacre, it was as a shock for me when Baruch Hildestein went into the mosque and he killed 29 Palestinians and hundreds were injured. In Israel, it was a very sad black day for the Jews and for the Israelis to what happened in Hebron. And I remember that the majority of the Jews in the world and in Israel denounced the Ibrahimi Mosque massacre and Baruch Goldstein. Those people and his supporters and Baruch Hildestein ideology is the mainstream now in Israel, and it was before October 7th. So when the main follower and the main assistant of Meir Kahana and Baruch Goldstein, Itamar Ben-Gvir, is the National Security Minister in Israel. National Security Minister. And he's a pillar of Netanyahu government. He became mainstream. And even the State Department, the American State Department, 2022, a few months before the Israeli election, they removed the Kahanist, you know, the Kahana movement, which Itamar Ben-Gvir, you know, where Itamar Ben-Gvir survived his first political life, they removed them from the State Department terrorist list, which gave them big push to get more votes, to get more money, to get more visibility in Israel and in the United States. So me personally, I started as a student, good student in my school, good student in my university. But the occupation doesn't leave you alone. Even if you wanted to be a silent, pacifist Palestinian, normal Palestinian citizen, it's about you. They don't want you to stay and remain between the river to the sea. So they closed my university in 2003. I was studying engineering, my last year in engineering. That made me crazy. I wanted my degree. It was about education. It was not about occupation for me. So I led the students using nonviolence resistance, and I was moved by Martin Luther King, by Gene Sharp, by anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, and Gandhi. That was what came first in Yahoo search that days, that I wanted to make a revolution to get my educational degree. It was not about to free Palestine. So I get my educational degree and go become a professor in engineering. So I tasted the non-violence victory. I managed with other students. I managed to lead the students to reopen my university against the Israeli military orders. And I graduated as an activist and as an engineer. And my life had two parallel goals: human rights and nonviolence activism and engineering. So that's how I started my activism. And I became recruiting more Palestinian youth to join nonviolence resistance, to train them to do nonviolence activities, to document the human rights violations. I founded the camera distribution project to give out video cameras to Palestinian families who live in the hotspots, to react in a non-violence way. And we were saying that our weapon is the camera. You know, they have guns and we have the cameras because it's the most trustful witness, and we depend to increase awareness and to make more people in the world aware about what's going on. So I volunteered with many Israeli and international groups. Then I decided to recruit Palestinian youth, especially because I believe that the youth can make the change and they can lead. And I established Youth Against Settlement to bring more youth to the movement. I managed to recruit hundreds of Palestinian youth. I was going all over West Bank, from South Mount Hebron to Nabi Saleh to Bil'in to Na'lin to all the hotspots to train Palestinian youth about nonviolence resistance, about using the video camera as a tool of documentation, and to, for sure, increase awareness about what's going on the ground. To be very honest, I feel that we are doing well. We are recruiting many people, especially Palestinian young Palestinian youth, and we are recruiting to the movement many international activists, especially international Jewish Americans and Europeans. They are moving sides and they are supporting the rights of Palestinians for self-determination and for peace and justice.
All right, very good. Can you tell us what's been happening? Well, you can tell us a little bit about what happened with Shahada Street and the closure of Shahada Street and how that has had an effect on the Palestinian community in Hebron. And is it still closed?
And can we put that in context? People may not know.
Yeah.
I will explain that.
Yeah, I think.
Yes. Palestinians signed Oslo Agreement 1993. They divided the land for A, B, and C as temporary solution. So the solution was to two-state solution, and A areas under the Palestinian Authority control, fully control. B areas are under the Palestinian civilian management and Israeli military control, the security, and it's about something else about C areas under the Israeli military control till 1999, 93 to 99, two-state solution for Palestinian state. Hebron was not part of Oslo. And because of the Ibrahimi Mosque massacre, 1994, Hebron was one of the main reasons of, disagreement that times, because the Israeli right wing and the Israeli extremists did that massacre to destroy Oslo. That was the reason. So they killed Rabin, and they killed the Palestinians in the mosque. And the violence around that days, it made Oslo not possible solution because it was not really, it was not good intentions for that. So here we had in 1997, Hebron redeployment agreement. So 1994, when the Ibrahim Mosque massacre happened, they divided the mosque and they closed the streets and the markets. And Hebron Street is our Times Square, Shuhada Street. It's the main street in the city. The main street in the city where all the businesses, the touristic area, the workshops, the Muslim main mosques, the Ibrahimi Mosque, the Sunniya Mosque, Al-Qazazim Mosque, the main Muslim cemetery, it's the city center. It's Times Square, Oxford Street in London. That's Shuhada Street. It was closed first after the Ibrahimi Mosque massacre because we were the victims of the massacre and we were punished because we were the victims of the massacre. So 1997, we had Hebron redeployment agreement. Who signed it? It was Netanyahu government. So Netanyahu signed Hebron protocol, which divided the city for H1, Hebron 1 under the Palestinian Authority control, and H2 under the Israeli military control, and it's more than C. It's between C and B, and Hebron municipality is responsible about the civilian affairs. This is how the Israeli government agreed with Hebron protocol. And in the Hebron protocol, they had a special paragraph to keep Hebron, to keep H2 Palestinian area, and to reopen Shuhada Street for Palestinian vehicles. So in the paragraph of which Netanyahu signed, H2, Hebron, 2, Shuhada Street, the main street in Hebron, to be reopened for Palestinians. Unfortunately, the second intifada started. They completely closed the area in H2 for Palestinians. So they put 22 checkpoints, 100 movement barriers, 1,000 Palestinian apartments became empty. So the transfer of Palestinians is not after October 7th, even it's after the second intifada. And around 1,800 shops closed because of the presence of the Israeli settlers in the city. Because Hebron is the only city after Jerusalem where Israeli settlers living between Palestinians inside the city. So this is the situation. Then, you know, October 7th started. They expanded the closed area. They restricted the checkpoints. They closed the majority of the checkpoints, and they made the life of the people almost impossible. So the main policy in West Bank and East Jerusalem, they don't evict you personally from your house or physically from your house, but they make it impossible for you to stay. We could feel that after October 7th openly, and they are announcing it. They announced it. No services, so you have no maintenance, no ambulance, no enough water, no enough electricity in H2 in Hebron and Area C and many areas in the West Bank. No security, you don't feel safe because of settler terror and army aggression. And no social life. You can't leave your house, you stay, and you can't have visitors in your house. So no visitors. So I'm now in my parents' house visiting them. They can't come to visit me because it's only the people and the families who are living inside the restricted part of the H2 are allowed. So you are living in a big jail and you don't feel safe in your house. You know, where I live in Tal Rumeda, I don't feel safe. I don't sleep well. I am gaining weight, you know, because of not being able to walk normally in the streets or to do any kind of sports because of settler terror and army aggression. And the Israeli soldiers are really aggressive to the point they beat you up, they break your bones without mercy, and they act as militia. Why they act as militia? The majority of the army units in the West Bank are settlers in an army uniform. Itamar Ben-Gvir gave out, Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Israeli National Security Minister, who is from Hebron, gave out 150,000 rifles to Israelis. And usually, normal Israelis don't take guns, don't take weapons. The majority of the Israelis, it's the settlers who took all that weapons. So many settlers around me who are 16, 17 years old, they walk around with their machine guns. So they scare people, they intimidate people, you know, I was attacked. They attacked me in my house almost every day. This morning, I was in bed around 7 a.m. I heard something broken outside. It was an empty beer bottle thrown to me. And today is Shabbat. They throw beer bottles on Shabbat. They throw stones on Shabbat. They steal my lemon tree on Shabbat. They stole my water tanks on Shabbat. They stole my CCTV camera systems many times, especially on Shabbat. Shabbat for me is a bad day. Why? Because I'm under severe restrictions, army raid, and settler violence. It's not only in Hebron, it's all over Area C. And in lately, it's the year of annexation according to Peace Now, 2024. But this year, it's the year of not annexation, stealing more and more lands. They advanced around 20,000 settlement units in the West Bank just this year, and we are in July. 20,000. This is a big number. Last year, they demolished more than 1,000 Palestinian housing units. Last year, around 1,400 attacks on Palestinians. Many Palestinians were killed. Last year, they built around 70 outposts, which is illegal even according to the Israeli law. Around 9 of them in Area A and B, under the Palestinian control area. They demolished houses in Area B. They built roads, around 114-kilometer long roads, many of them in Area A and B and Area C. Settlers, they do it by themselves. Around 50 communities last year, and this year around 30. We are talking about 80 Palestinian communities. Area C left their homes. Many communities left. Why? Because of settler terror and army aggression, and the Israeli government is giving a lot of money to settlers. They gave money, the finance minister gave 70 million shekels to outposts. Imagine that an Israeli finance minister is giving money to illegal outposts according to the Israeli law. 70 million shekels. Israel located 7 billion shekels to enhance settlements in the coming years, more new roads, new industrial zones, new agriculture areas, new malls, shopping areas, universities. That's West Bank. There is no two states anymore. Everybody's talking about two states. Where are the two states? You know, there is no geographical continuity in the West Bank now. There is no geographical continuity between Hebron and Bethlehem, between Bethlehem and Ramallah. It's closed. They are building now. They want to build in E1 area in between Ramallah and Nablus. It's all with more and more settlements. And everybody is talking about two-state solution, and the Israeli settlers and the Israeli government is calling to transfer the Palestinians from Area C, from West Bank to Jordan, from East Jerusalem to other countries, from 48 to somewhere, you know, and from H2 in Hebron. So we really feel not safe. We feel that 48 is going to be repeated again of becoming refugees. This is the main question, the main typical questions which Palestinians ask me. Issa, are we going to be refugees again? Are we going to be refugees again? And West Bank, we don't have Hamas. It's all Palestinian Authority. And Palestinian Authority is collapsing. They didn't pay the salaries of their employees in the last 3 months. No salaries. They didn't get salaries. So it's collapsing. The Palestinian Authority has no authority. They don't, you know, banking system is collapsing. No enough water. We are in summer now and no water. No enough electricity. Why? Because Israel sells us electricity. Israel sells us water, and they don't locate enough water for us, in spite that the majority of the water aquifers are in the West Bank, but Israel controls them by the Israeli water company Mekorot. This is the situation. No water, no enough electricity. They control the import, the export. Non-violence resistance is not allowed. And we face settlers, terror and army aggression with army raid almost every day, with army acting as a militia, not as a real official army. Each soldier does what he believes without any accountability. But we, the Palestinians, we don't want to be refugees again. Me and my group, Youth Against Settlements, we chose to use non-violence resistance. We did it 20 years ago. We started Youth Against Settlement 2007. And to be very honest, we are more convinced after October 7th that non-violence resistance must be the only solution to make peace and make the occupation costly. Because without making occupation and settlements costly for the occupiers and for the settlers, nothing will change. Israel didn't want peace in the last 20 years because they were getting only incentives to make peace. They took the incentives of Oslo without making a real peace process. And now they are taking many incentives. They are asking many Jews and many people who are pro-Israel to give them more money. And that's very wrong. So we ask everybody, please be part of the solution. Don't support occupation. Don't support settlements. We are ready to educate you, to teach you, to increase awareness, and to be in the ground, steadfast, not leaving, staying, remaining in spite of everything happening to us.
All right. Wow. That's quite something. Thank you. All right. So we're going to talk about the one state solution versus the two-state solution, which I think you've already indicated on a physical level is impossible. There are just so many settlers now in the West Bank that having two states, it would be very difficult. So I want to address Jeff on this because you mentioned it in your book that you are also an advocate of the one-state solution. Can you also talk about why the two-state solution is no longer viable and what the One Democratic State campaign is doing?
Well, the two-state idea isn't viable because, again, the whole purpose of Zionism and of Israel until today was to Judaize and take over all of what's called historic land of Israel, or Palestine, between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River, between the river and the sea. For those of you that are familiar with the Bible, with the Old Testament, In fact, if you look at the modern map of Israel, the geopolitical map, two states kind of make sense. Here you got Israel on this side, and here's Tel Aviv over there by the Mediterranean. And the further east you go, the less and less Jewish it is until you get into the West Bank, where Issa lives, towards the Jordan River, and that's mainly Palestinian. So, okay, it looks fine. You get a Jewish state on the left side of the map, and you can detach the West Bank and whatever's left of Gaza, and that becomes a Palestinian state. But if you look at the Bible, and, Zionism was not a religious movement. Although, as Issa says, the religious Zionists, the extremists have taken over to some degree. But it started really as a secular nationalist movement. Nevertheless, it read the Bible in nationalist terms, if not in religious terms. And in the Bible, Judea and Samaria, which is what Israel, the Israeli government and Israelis, even on all the media, called the West Bank. They don't call it the West Bank anymore. Nobody does that. It's Judea and Samaria and Gaza. That's the heart. Like Judea and Samaria is the heart of the land of Israel with Jerusalem in the Bible. This is where almost all the biblical events happen, from Abraham through Joshua and Moses, Joshua, King David, Jesus. I mean, it's all within this area that would have become a Palestinian state. So the very idea that a Jewish nationalist movement could give up Jerusalem, the old city, and Judea and Samaria to Arabs is ridiculous. It would never, ever happen. You know what? If they were forced to, they'd rather give up Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv, that area belonged to the Philistines back in biblical days, So that's part of the issue. I mean, it sounds esoteric, but everything in the Bible is really current events. Issa mentions the Machpelah, the mosque, the Abrahami mosque with the cave of Machpelah in it, and the massacre and how crucial that is. Well, that's where Abraham and Sarah were buried, according to the Bible. So in other words, what happened 4,000 years ago is current events. So you have to plug that in. And then, of course, Israel has the ability to take over the West Bank and Gaza. I mean, it has, with all the peace processes that we can remember, including Oslo, no one has ever stopped Israel from building settlements. In the brightest days of Oslo, when they were talking about two states, no one ever said, all right, we're talking about two states. In order to negotiate, let's stop settlement building. and now let's negotiate. No, they allowed, the 7 years of Oslo allowed settlement building. So Israel doubled its settler population in those 7 years. Well, it's like, you and I are talking about how we're going to divide the pizza that we're having together. And in the meantime, while we're talking, I'm eating it. You see, so it's gone. I mean, it's buried under settlements and highways and military control, as Issa has said. And then, of course, the idea, again, has always been one state. There is one state today. I mean, it's, Israel, there's only one governmental authority that controls the entire country, from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River, and that's Israel. There's only one government. There's only one army, right? As Issa said, he might be living in an area controlled a little bit by the Palestinian Authority, but the Israeli army really ruled, and the Palestinian Authority itself is only in power because it was established as a collaborationist regime with Israel. So it does all of Israel's dirty security work as well. I mean, Issa has to fear the Palestinian police as much as he has to fear the Israeli military. So in other words, the entire country is run by Israel. There's one electrical system, as Issa has said. There's one water system. There's one land system. Israel controls all the borders. You cannot go visit Issa in Hebron without going through Israeli border controls everywhere. So there is one state today, and it's an apartheid state, because in a way, Israel needs a two-state solution, because even though it controls and claims the entire country, there are 5 million Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, those that, Trump and Israel would like to move out to Sudan or Libya or Indonesia, but they're still there, the 2.5 million. But but that's the idea, really, is to move them out. And Issa is right, to move out the people of the West Bank as well. So, but in the meantime, Israel's stuck with 5 million Palestinians. You know, there's three ways in which a colonial power gets rid of, a settler project gets rid of the indigenous population. Think of the U.S. You either do genocide, you know, which is done in the U.S. and which is currently going on in Israel, kill them off. But if you can't kill them all, drive them out of the country or displace them, which Israel has. Half the Palestinian people live outside of Palestine and cannot come back. Or you close them into reservations. You marginalize them. In reservations in the U.S., in South Africa, it was called the Bantustan. You know, and in Israel, what Issa is describing is this areas A and B. So you've got three little islands in the West Bank around, let's say, Nablus and Jenin and Tulkarm in the north, around Ramallah in the center, around Hebron and Bethlehem in the south, and then what's ever left of Gaza. And so those three enclaves plus Gaza would become a Bantustan like Transkei, like the other Bantustans were in South Africa. Again, because that relieves Israel of those 5 billion Palestinians. So that means that Israel takes over 85% of the land of Palestine. So it basically has Judaized Palestine. 85% of the country, including all the borders, is Israel. And the Palestinians are then squeezed into these little enclaves on the other 15% that remain. So that, in a way, there will be a two-state solution, but we have to remember that a two-state solution can also be apartheid. Yeah. For example, just these days, if we watch the news, Macron, it's very dramatic, the first G7 country to declare that it's going to support the idea of a Palestinian state. Now, I haven't seen the details. There's a big difference between supporting a Palestinian state within the 1967 borders, right? In which there is, even though it's small, that's the real two-state idea, that there is a Palestinian state in the West Bank with East Jerusalem and Gaza that's territorially contiguous, that has an economy, that has borders with Arab countries, that has some sovereignty. That's the idea of the two-state solution. Is that what Macron is supporting? A Palestinian state in the 67 borders, or simply a Palestinian state? Well, the Bantustan that I just outlined of these little enclaves, non-sovereign, non-viable, all controlled by Israel, right, with no borders with an Arab country, no real economy, on 15% of Palestine, that can also, that you call it a state, and that conforms to Macron's idea of a Palestinian state. So just saying a Palestinian state means you can also support apartheid. And that's the problem. So that the only way out of settler colonialism, just to end it really quickly, the only way out is to transform the entire country into one democratic state of equal rights for all its citizens. I mean, that's what happened in South Africa. You know, there was simply a transformation from an apartheid regime, which we have today in Israel. This is an apartheid regime. I mean, Amnesty has said this. The UN has said this. It is an apartheid regime. Transform it into a democratic state of all its citizens. We don't have time to go into all the details, but again, it isn't something crazy and far-fetched. There already is one state. So it's transforming the one state that Israel created. This one state isn't a Palestinian creation. Israel made this one state from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River, right? We have to transform this one apartheid state that Israel created into one democratic state for all the people living here. And that, of course, not only gives Palestinians the space and they can come back to the whole of Palestine, and, you know, it gives them their patrimony back, but it also allows the refugees to return. So in many ways that we can't really get into tonight, it's a very just settlement. And Israelis remain. I mean, Israelis remain as equal citizens. Nobody's going to drive them out. So that's the idea that we're trying to push. But of course, Israel would never accept that. And because Israel would not be a Jewish state. The governments, especially the American government, would never accept it, and the Israeli government would never accept it. So really, what we need is to mobilize the international community, all of you. You're the only allies the Palestinians have. To mobilize you, you're already mobilized behind BDS. You're doing webinars like this. You have your coalitions in Maine and so on. You're already organized, but you're lacking a political program. So
Right.
what our One Democratic State campaign is trying to do is to bring a critical mass of Palestinians and Israeli Jews behind a political program for one state. There's another website that you could look at. Look at our website, ICAHD.org, ICAHD.org, which is a great source of information. But there's another website, OneStateCampaign.org, and there you'll find the political program, the 10-point program for the One Democratic State that the One Democratic State campaign has formulated. So if we can insert that into the political movement, that gives you a real clear political goal to advocate for, which is something that I think you're lacking today.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, we do a lot of things, but there's BDS. We had hunger strikers for Gaza that went to New York and demonstrated in front of the UN. We have groups that go to our representatives, political representatives to press for Palestinian causes. And we have education like we're doing now, but it's fragmented to some extent. And I think that kind of resistance is probably in Israel itself and Palestine could be fragmented. And to coalesce around a one democratic state is a great idea. But how do we have to convince our governments that this is the way to go? How do we do that? And is there a strong grassroots feeling in Israel and in Palestine for a one democratic state? Or is it still just an idea out there that hasn't coalesced?
Israelis will never go for a one-state idea, but you have to ignore them and bypass them. Because, that's right, the Israeli Jewish population will never go for it.
Okay.
Why would they? I mean, they have all the land, they have all the resources, they have all the power, like the whites in South Africa. They have to be forced. And I think, like in South Africa, there has to be a Palestinian-led movement, something like the ANC. The problem with the PLO, with the Palestinian Authority as a collaborationist authority, is to dismantle the PLO to a large degree. So there is no more ANC type. So that's what the Palestinians are working to reorganize, and then to get a critical mass of Palestinians behind the one-state idea, and then to come to all of you, for that support. So it's a process. In the meantime, and I'm going to let Issa talk, in the meantime, the most urgent thing to do is to fight against the normalization process. This is a whole other issue, but the Abraham Accords that Trump is pushing to complete with Netanyahu, with Saudi Arabia, and maybe even Syria coming into it, is extremely dangerous, because normalization is a closure. It means the end. Israel and its settlements are now recognized, they're accepted, they're internationally okay. Israel has normal diplomatic relations. Palestinians are locked into their Bantustan, and there's very little political space for Palestinians to struggle, or for all of us to support Palestinians once normalization is accomplished. The people say, hey, it's been normalized. We're moving on now to Sudan, we're moving on to climate change, other issues. So I think normalization that we're in, the process that we're in now, is the biggest threat to the Palestinians since the Nakba. We don't have time to get into it, and I want to let Issa.
Issa, can you comment on that, and also comment whether about the movement within the Palestinian community for a one democratic state? How popular is that? How strong is that movement?
First, I want to thank you for all your efforts to make peace in Palestine and Israel. Everything you said is very important, and you are protecting us. Your activities, your solidarity, your actions are really protecting the Palestinians on the ground and giving us hope that we feel we are not alone. And for sure, you are protecting the narrative, because the Israeli occupation tries to destroy our image and describe us all as terrorists. And as Jeff said, the Israel is the Israeli government is who created one state reality, one apartheid state. This is the situation. I can say that Jeff said 5,000 Palestinians. Israel has problems with 5,000. I say no, 7,000, 7 million Palestinians. 5 million, I say 7 million. I include the Palestinians inside Israel. So they don't want even the Palestinians inside Israel, and for sure they don't want Jeff too. So we all who trying to have solution. The Israeli government and the Israeli society, unfortunately, is moving more to fascism. And many Israeli leaders in Labour Party, in Meretz, in many parties, they describe Israel as a fascist state. And 80% of the Israelis supported transferring Palestinians from Gaza. That's all the Jews in Israel, because the other 20% are Palestinian Israelis and not Jewish Israelis. So the majority of the Jews in Israel, they're calling for transfer. Because Jeff said the white supremacists don't change. We want to change the rules. At the same time, the French Revolution, only 10% of the French people participated in the French Revolution. We don't want everybody to be part of the revolution. We don't want everybody to be part of the protests and the resistance. If we get committed 10% Palestinians, 10% Israelis, we will make peace. How the one-state solution popular in Palestine? The Palestinians don't talk about solutions, by the way. But Palestinians now talk about how to defend their homes, how to resist the occupation, how to live with dignity, because we have no enough water for drinking in summer now. The majority of Palestinian families complaining about no water, no enough clean water in West Bank. The majority of Palestinians are talking about lack of electricity. They don't have enough electricity in winter. Majority of Palestinians talking about movement, freedom of movement between cities, between villages, inside the same city. There is no enough movement. So they made the Palestinians suffer to earn their living. The majority of Palestinian workers don't work. Palestinian Palestinian Authority employees don't get salaries. So the Israeli occupation controls all aspects of our lives. But to be more clear, there are more Palestinians support the one-state solution than the Palestinians who support two-state solution. If you talk to Palestinians, they will support. They agree. They don't mind who is their neighbors. If we live in one equal rights state, by the way, I believe in two equal rights state with protecting all ethnicities, and protecting all the dreams of any country. But it's not the reality. The reality that the Palestinians are in defense. Palestinians are busy fighting for basic living. Palestinians are defending themselves, and Palestinians are remaining. Many Palestinians are remaining, staying, resisting. Each teacher goes to school is a non-violence activist. Each engineer, each lawyer, each journalist. The journalists are targets in West Bank and Gaza. They killed 230 journalists in Gaza, more than 230 journalists in the West Bank. They are detaining hundreds of journalists and activists, peaceful activists in Israeli administrative detention. We are talking about more than 3,000 Palestinian prisoners in administrative detention now. You know what is administrative detention?
Yes.
I think maybe our listeners don't.
Yeah, we do, but perhaps our listeners may need it.
Yes. So administrative detention, it's that you are in jail and you don't know why. Your lawyer doesn't know why. Sometimes your judge doesn't know why. The military judge doesn't know why. The Israeli intelligence, they say he's a security threat. That's the end. The Israeli settlers in Hebron openly called to put me in administrative detention as well, to put Issa as a non-violence activist, because they don't want any voices. They want to shut off the Palestinian voices. Mainly, who will make the change? It's you, Wendy and Rich. It's you who will help us to make the change. We together, with people as Jeff, with the Israeli peace camp, with you outside Palestine, and with other Palestinians on the ground who are remaining and staying and making the occupation costly by many means, the ones who will lead. Now we are fragmented, yes, I agree, because the occupation is doing well with a divide and conquer. It's a colonial British theory, divide and conquer, and this is what is happening. But the future is ours. Now we see more people supporting us, more people are in our sides, more politicians in the world, they are aware, and they are, they don't have any other choice except to support the Palestinian rights and to make Israel accountable according to the international law mechanism. So we can do it. We need to be more united. We need to be more convinced that we can make the change, but we are in the right direction now. We are, making the occupation costly. Imagine that the Israeli prime minister is wanted to the International Criminal Court. That was a dream for me. Israel is labeled as an apartheid state. Israel is accused of genocide. That's a big deal. It's not something small. It's so big. With all respect to the blood in Gaza, it's very, very big achievements for the Palestinian cause. I think now we are in the right way. We are in the right direction, and we need to make it faster. That's all. And be united and accept all the big organization theories and practices, and we believe in our diversity. Diversity is not a weakness, it's a strength. So we should be united. We should accept each other. I don't agree 100% with Jeff, but I like to work with him. We can work together. We can make the movement stronger together. We can make peace possible for everybody together. We can reduce anti-Semitism to minimum. We can reduce all type of racism to minimum. We can reduce Islamophobia for its minimum. It's us who can lead for a better future for everybody, because we want to give an example of living together with full equality, with justice and peace and freedom and self-determination for everybody.
We thank you. Before we wrap up, in a minute or two, our tech person will put up a screen which will allow our listeners, if they want to donate to the causes the two of you support. And there will be a link you can click on or a QR code that you can use. But please go on. I just wanted to alert our listeners to that.
So they can support us and donate for us, me and Jeff.
Yes.
And thanks to Jeff for changing, Israeli committee for against house demolition to international community against house committee against house demolition. Jeff is doing great work. Many other organizations in Israel and Palestine, they are doing great work. We depend on you to support us, to protect us, and to raise our voices and level up Palestinian education, Palestinian voices, Palestinian media, Palestinian economy, leveling up Palestinians. It's making the occupation more costly.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Jeff, do you have any final words? We're almost out of time.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad you could hear, both of us. We have to multitask. In other words, it's not easy because, we all have our lives. But, we have to keep the focus on Gaza. I guess first and foremost, the genocide, the starvation, that's the most urgent, but we can't take our eyes off the West Bank, because there's beginning to be starvation in the West Bank as well.
Yeah.
Israel has made Palestinian laborers dependent on the Israeli economy. And now for almost 2 years, workers can't come in. So there's no income. And then with all the other repressions that Issa has mentioned. So we have to look at the West Bank, which is being ethnically cleansed and so on. And then we also have to look at the big picture of normalization and the threat that Israeli settler colonialism will actually succeed if these Abraham Accords are signed on to. So we have to sort of keep our eyes at least on 3 levels: Gaza, the West Bank, and normalization. If we really want to be able to advance the Palestinian cause and present the issues in a meaningful way.
Okay.
So I'll leave it at that, and thank you very much for having us.
Be able to put that thing up.
Yeah. We're going to put up onto the screen the places that we can donate. And that's the Friends of Hebron and ICOD. So that should be coming up. There it is.
Okay.
ICOD USA and Friends of Hebron.
Right.
Is that good?
Well,
Yes, it's great.
yeah.
Thank
For
you.
people we have a U.S. Chapter. We have several chapters around the world. ICAD USA does wonderful work. Mike Spaeth in Indiana, who's also the head of the Middle East Center for the Indiana Center for Middle East Peace, is the chair. And so support ICAD USA. And Issa, you put in your plug for Friends of Hebron.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. And I like Mike. Mike is doing great work. So HebronFriends.org. It's our sponsor organization. They support us. They help us. So please don't feel that your work is not affecting us. No. Every action, every tweet, every penny you donate, it's making a huge difference on the ground. So thank you very much.
Okay. Wonderful.
Okay.
Well, thank you both so much for a really great discussion. And thank all of our visitors here for
Yes.
being here.
And let's remember, August 9th will be the last of this three-part series. Fateh Assam, the former regional representative for the UN High Commission on Human Rights, will be our guest. And we hope you can join us. You can use the same link that you used to log on to today's webinar.
And if you didn't happen to see the webinar but registered, it is being recorded, and that will be available.
And they will be posted on YouTube as well. Last week's, this week's, and August 9th.
All right.
Okay?
All right.
Thank you. Thank
Bye,
you.
you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your support.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
nice day.
Okay.
You too.
You too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.